Hi everyone, Elizabeth here. So as we are now done with Halloween and the Day of the Dead, Holy Day, and we're transitioning still into Scorpio season, which is kind of, the darkest sign of the zodiac, transitioning fall into winter, going into fall back. So we're, obviously gaining more darkness. I just want to say that this is an opportunity and a time to really start mending those relationships, which is really difficult now in a time where we're in a divide, and also start spending time with Granny. October 31st was my Camino anniversary. So I hiked the Portuguese way for the Camino de Santiago in the late October time of 2018. And I walked into Santiago on October 31st, which was kind of symbolic considering, it's a time when people are channeling their dark energies and ancestors and all this stuff. But I kind of was burning and purging out the sadness and that dark side that still sat within me from divorce. And collectively, 2018 was a great year. And personally, I was suffering. In 2021, collectively, it's pretty horrible. Personally, my life is great. So it's an example that no matter what is going on in the global sphere of stuff, you can still maintain your own sovereignty and still work with the co-creation of building the life that you want. Obviously, I'm kind of seeking some forms of employment right now and trying to figure that out, which is really difficult in the area that I live in, because you have to have something running through, you have to have that saline solution running through your veins in order to get a friggin' job. But, I think time will tell in terms of in my own personal life if it's time to get up and uproot and move. Why I wanted to do this video is I was thinking a lot about, the darkness. There's a lot of people that are like, God, should I celebrate Halloween or Samhain? And I did my last video in terms of what I witnessed. And I forgot a lot of stories because I was on the spot and I don't write things down before I do these videos. I just kind of go on a whim. And then I just started rehashing and thinking about some stories. I thought about my one lady. After her shot, she got diagnosed again with breast cancer and her legs just kept giving out. And she ended up dying in June or July, I think. Her birthday was in June. That was the last time I saw her because her birthday was the same as my sister's, June 25th. And I celebrated with her on that little birthday. I visited her room and I never saw her ever again. And she died a few weeks later in hospice. She just had a hard time standing up and moving. So I recently heard this term, vaxxident, and I thought, you know what? I think that's pretty spot on. Not only is crime rate going up, but things like car crashes, car accidents have increased. So why the hell is this happening? I checked my work email last week. In the last video, I talked about how I played ping pong with a 100-year-old. She was standing in her room and just passed out. Just fell, passed out, hit her head, blood on the floor. Another couple who's still independent enough to drive got in a car accident last week because he started experiencing chest pains while he was driving. Another person was rushed to the hospital because of extreme dizziness. That's 3 situations in 1 week. I also teach an online community college class, so I teach a yoga class, teaching kids about the 8 limbs of yoga, and they do this self-practice, and it's really helped a lot of college kids because they're under so much stress and anxiety, and being on technology all the time causes stress and anxiety, so they find a lot of peace and ability to manage their time and stress a little bit better with yoga and meditation. Not going to go into the spiritual sides of that, but our mandate was October 18th, and on October 10th, so the mandate was not only for state employees, but it also included college kids. So if you wanted to go on campus, you either had to write an exemption, or you had to get your shot in order to maintain your student status. And I got an email, I think it was on the 10th of October, of a student that said, I'm hospitalized with Bell's palsy. According to the Google search, Bell's palsy is a very rare issue and disease, whatever they want to call it. So I think I can link being hospitalized for Bell's palsy with what was going on with our mandates as part of a result from something that somebody had to take within their body. Why are all these accidents happening? I'm not talking about just car accidents. Why are people just passing out on a whim? Why have falls increased more? In America, we've thrown our elders into a retirement home, so we have gotten disconnected. It is very challenging when you get to the point of being a full-time caretaker, especially if you're still working. You cannot do that, so you do need help and assistance. However, in other countries and cultures, they have lived with or cared for their elders. A lot of the Asian countries do it, the Filipinos, all across the world. It seems like a lot of these more developing nations are more tightly knit with their family bond than in America. I don't want to be egotistical or, running in that part of the mind where it's just saying, well, they got it, they're going to die. I don't even want to think that, because I have my own family members and friends and people that I care for and colleagues that have done this. Whether they did it for the force of their job or against their will is another story. But I do think in a time of this silent war, which is what I mentally remember going through in my head when I lived in Germany, I thought, World War II could never re-exist. I didn't really quite put the pieces together of everything at the time until COVID made things very clear. But I do know that the world was overpopulated, or at least that's what we were led to believe. And I felt that there was always some form of social cleansing. So when you start to learn and read about witches, some in England, but probably all over Europe, they did use the name calling of somebody as a witch as a form of social cleanse to get rid of kind of the misfits out of the community. So I knew that at some point we would be experiencing something, but I thought that maybe it would be more on an environmental or climate change level. I didn't really realize about a pandemic. Like, I always knew vaccines were bullshit, but I just didn't really know a ton about it until COVID made everything very, very clear. And as I've expressed in my former video, we are losing that little bit of the last part of our generation that was 100% human. The millennials, I was born in 85, so the technology, like, I didn't have a laptop or a cell phone until I was a freshman in college, until 2003. And the kids younger than me had all that stuff at the age of like 7, and it was just weird. So in my area of millennials, we're kind of technically the last ones, but really the 70 babies and the boomers, well, 60 babies are Gen X, as well as, or Gen Y, whatever it is, and boomers, they, especially the greatest generation, the ones that are born in the 20s and 30s, they are really the last ones who have had 100% human experience life. And so maybe we should start spending time with our elders, not only to learn about your own ancestry or your family lineage, learn the stories, but try to gain some wisdom. Not everybody has a really, pleasant family member, so this may or may not apply to you, but at least at some point you can start to make amends and just spend time with your grandparents or your elders, or maybe there's an aunt that you've been disconnected to for a long time, especially if they've gotten this, because we don't know how it's going to affect people. Not everyone's going to drop dead within, 15 minutes or 48 hours of getting this. A lot of people have gotten really wrecked from it, but if they are coming out with Bell's palsy and all this other crap, high blood pressure. The woman that passed out that I just mentioned, apparently her blood pressure dropped and then it went up to 173 over like 43. It was insane. So at this point, we have to understand that, especially if they're older, they're not going to have a long lifespan. The declining process, from my experience of working in a senior home, has accelerated drastically. So especially if Granny's getting her booster shots, just start spending time with her. Write these family stories, whatever you want. Maybe you want her just to write a story or just to spend some time with you. Whatever you want, it's time to make that family connection, because once these people go, I really don't know what the future will hold. I do know the kids younger than me, I'm 36, especially the ones that are in college now, are pretty much lost. They've been hooked on technology. Oh, another reason why I did this video is because I sat outside with my fiance and handed out candy on Sunday. These frigging kids didn't even say trick or treat. Now, it could be just because we're in Seattle, and as somebody that comes from Cleveland, kids out here at the age of 16 are driving BMWs. And meanwhile, like, everyone in Ohio was driving some like crummy ass car. It's just like we kind of had it a little rougher, maybe not as wealthy. So things weren't quite handed to us, but they didn't even say trick or treat. It was just this like entitlement, like just give us candy. Or there were these really, really young kids that were like 6 years old who were like mutes. They didn't even say anything. They just kind of stood there and kind of looked at you. And the mom's like, say trick or treat. So everybody laughs and it's like, oh, it's so cute. It's so cute, you know? But it's kind of weird. It's like, wow, like a 6-year-old can't even say this. It's just weird when you're analyzing social behavior between the youth, that it's just different. It's a little less human. It's like this weird social interaction that they don't know what to do or to say. As I've seen in Seattle, I call them like the Queen Anne moms. You have these rich moms pushing around a little baby in a bob stroller, and the kid is behind an iPad. I'm going to do a separate video on why this is really bad, because I formerly trained a child psychologist who said that putting a baby and an infant or a really young child, let's just say toddler, putting them on a screen is pretty much like injecting them with heroin. So what are we reproducing and what are we doing? We as parents, I'm not a parent, but parents and our society is contributing to this, because there is some friggin' ignorance or naivety in the mind that thinks like, oh, it's just not going to affect them. So that's why it's important to spend time with Granny and gain wisdom. One thing that I know that comes from the Bible, that you can get wisdom from your elders. All ancient tribes have done that. They've gotten wisdom from their leaders. Let's just say the elders. So let's try to spend that time with them, because Granny and Grampy's time isn't going to be very long, especially if they have toxic chemicals, adjuvants, DNA from animals and humans, and mRNA, which we don't even really know a whole lot about. And it's causing massive heart issues in people. I mean, think about it. 1 minute you're fine, the next minute you're driving home from a nice dinner and you have chest pain, and then you cause an accident. So why are these accidents continuing to happen? They might not die directly from the shot, but they may indirectly die because of these side effects or the things that are affecting their brain. I'm telling you, the couple people that I've served at the retirement home with memory loss, it accelerated big time. They started losing their keys and losing their phone every single day. In fact, it started happening numerous times a day. I couldn't keep track of them. I would spend like 45 minutes of staff time trying to find someone's keys, and this was happening every day. Nobody wanted to take a step forward and say, hey, let's put a tile, one of those kind of beeper things, on your keys, or let's try to link it up on your phone or something like that. Nobody wanted to be proactive on it. They just wanted to continue to spend staff time. And the brain fog, we know basic stuff about brain fog is caused a lot from overconsumption of carbohydrates, heavy toxic metals, all these things that people don't find truthful because they want to believe that this is good and healthy for you. They don't want to think about inflammation to the brain. They don't want to think about a lot of other things. So at this point in time, got to put the divide stuff aside, especially if your parents have this, older relatives. Somebody like Cliff High thinks like just because you got it, you're going to die in 2 years. I don't believe in playing God in that sense. Like, nobody knows the path. I mean, somebody could have like 19 injections. It's like kind of the fat and happy person. Like, they smoked and ate fast food their whole entire life and they lived till like 92. Like, those things are going to happen, but within the exception will always happen, but within the main bubble, most people are going to be affected, especially when that's running through your DNA. And it's leaving the deltoid muscles and going into the bloodstream, and it needs somewhere to go. So that would be my best recommendation during this time of darkness or season of darkness, I should say, is to start building up that family tie. It's really important, especially if you have children, just to start getting them that human connection with grandma and grandpa or somebody, because their time is going to be limited. All of our time is going to be limited, but I think we're going to see a lot more problems coming up. Several spiritual people, like somebody like Jean Decode back in May, we just kept saying like, just be careful in November, be careful in November. I don't believe in operating or running in fear, but I do believe in having awareness. So when you have several spiritual people picking stuff up, like what the hell is going to happen in November? I don't know. But all I know is when you are operating in higher frequencies of love, that generally these things kind of avoid you. I live in a ground floor kind of villa, and 4 apartments have been robbed in a week, and then people came back last week. They stole the security cameras right off the doorknob. So I'm not saying these things can't happen to you, but I really feel if you are maintaining some form of positivity, taking care of yourself, taking care of your mind, body, and your spirit, operating a little bit higher frequency maybe is the word, that somehow these things will tend to avoid happening. There's just that energy channel, and it's not coming from a fake place like I'm high vibes. It's coming from a place of authenticity. Working through that, if you need to burn off certain things, like, man, I've been high and low with a lot of anger over the last couple weeks, maybe a month, but the number one thing to do is to drop the BS to the side with your family members if you disagree, and just try to build that. It might not be easy, it might not be successful, but at least you tried and you spent time, and spend the quality time with your elders. Thank you for liking, sharing, and subscribing. Thank you for listening. I'm trying to navigate through a few things, and I'm going to start doing more complex videos and, the thing on Jesus and all this stuff. So, anywho, have a great day. Bye-bye.